one follows the other. I mean, that's just like testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Well, good afternoon, Wes.
Howdy, John.
Good to see you. Glad you could come.
Long time since we rubbed elbows.
Yes, my golly, back there when you helped us make cheddar. We'll get into that a little later here on, okay? Well, I'd like to have a little conversation here with you on your experiences on cheese making and your famous father that well known, and you carried on the tradition. So this afternoon we have Wesley Thill. Today is the 28th of November, and I'm going to have we're going to audio and video. Dr. Hines doing a video here for Historic Cheesemaking Center. Well, Wes, moving right along, where were you born?
Born in Clayton, Wisconsin, 12/25/28 in the Crescent Valley Cheese Factory. My mother and dad were running a cheese factory up there then.
And Crescent Valley, where is that?
That's up in Barron County, Clayton, Wisconsin address. It's a rural, right straight east of Clayton.
And what type of cheese was your dad making?
He was making brick cheese then, raw milk brick.
Well, they probably didn't even have a patch.
They didn't even know what it was then.
My God, it takes pretty good raw milk to make brick cheese.
Yeah.
Did they use lactic starter, do you remember? Or
No starter at all.
Is that right?
No starter at all.
Heated it up and...
No.
When
It
did you
didn't blow up either.
When did you set it? Did you ever use one of those little rivets?
Well, I remember Dad using one of those things, but I was too young to really know the particulars of cheese making at the time. See, the folks lost everything by fire in '36, and that's when we left northern Wisconsin. And I remember prior to the fire, the season or so prior to the fire, Dad wanted to make Colby horns. Then he had to have a lactic starter. And he had a cheesemaker going to come in and show him how to do it. He didn't arrive, so Dad built it. He did it himself without anybody showing him how.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it worked.
Did he start the lactic from milk itself, or did he go to another factory probably to get it?
I was too young to really know. All I know is he was carrying a culture. I can vaguely remember that.
And of course, then your dad made brick there, but he said he was making Colby.
He started making some Colby horns, yeah.
And that's a wash curd, right?
Yeah, Colby is. And
Can you explain? You made little Colby.
you mentioned we made Colby, we made wash curd, we made Munster's a wash curd. No, Monterey Jack is.
Yeah.
Monterey Jack's a wash curd.
And some of them do, and some of them don't.
Well, the factory up there at Crescent Valley, all we had was 32-volt light system. We didn't have 110.
That's right.
Everything was operated by steam. Steam was lifted away from the vat with a steam jet just above the separator. Then it was separated. The separator was steam driven. It was a dealer valve.
Is that right?
And then the steam jet lifted it away from the separator and took it outside to the weight tank.
Is that right?
And no matter how cold it was, that tank never froze up. You could always see steam coming off it. You pumped that away. Let's see, once away from the vat and once away from the separator, good Lord, you'd have that up near 200.
That's right. I've never seen a place where they had the steam jet. You know what I mean? To incorporate it into lift a
liquid.
Yeah.
Well, we did it at Chelsea. We had Russell Burns was there ahead of us, and he had a pump there, and the pump was giving us trouble, so Dad just ordered a steam jet. We set it up. Hell, did that pump away.
The only steam jet that I ever knew was the one with the water hose, and when the water got shut off and the steam came out, did you ever get burned by one of those?
Dad did, but I never did.
That's about one of the most dangerous things, I think, that
Yeah.
they still be getting burnt. You
Yeah.
tell these guys now, don't take it easy, and then when you incorporate the water with the steam. But the first thing is, we had one kid here just the other day got burned, man, and the whirl, that steam coming out.
Oh, you mentioned that's dynamite.
And
right.
I was in a Turner Hall here, and we had one of these interviews, and this one fellow said to me, "Well," he said, "I'm a cheesemaker too. A young lad works right over here across the street." I said, "Oh, you're a cheesemaker too?" Rolls up his arm, shows me a bird. I said, "Yeah." pot pipes and hot steam, and it was one of the hazards of making cheese. All right, so then you learned cheese making right from the start up, or right from the young boy.
Well,
Did you
I-
help in the factory too when you was a young boy?
Oh, a little bit. I can remember nailing brick boxes together. And then-
Wooden boxes.
Yeah, half boxes and full boxes. And then from up there, 36, Dad went back to the University of Wisconsin for 6 weeks, got the last 6 weeks of the dairy course. Then he got to work at Sycamore, with Dunmore.
Back to the brick box. Now, what brick box weighed about 120 pounds, wouldn't you say?
A half box,
A big box?
yeah, a full box would be 114, 120 pounds. A half box would be 60.
Just to give an idea of what we're talking about. And then, of course,
Half box would be like so. Full box would be like so.
you know, I used to wrap brick back in the 40s there with when we used to make it out of the kettles. Dip it out of the kettles in the wintertime, didn't have enough milk to, and we wrapped it for Kraft and had 3 labels. Kraft brick, Mount Hope brick, and some other brick. It didn't make any difference which one we put on. And
I don't remember the different labels that Dad used up there, but I know a lot of it got shipped to Chicago. Some went to the Twin Cities, but I don't know what labels he sold under.
Well, what I never forgot because I said, well, what labels should I use? And it didn't make any difference, even in the same box. It was Kraft and it was brick cheese, and that was back before the war. Or while the war was going on there in 40, 41. I was a young boy helping in the wintertime, helping this old timer make cheese.
What do you? Well, you're talking about the war period. Were you with your dad? Probably the tail end of the war. We bought some cheddar boxes from you out there. We were at Chelsea.
No.
I remember being out
After the war, you mean?
sometime like that.
Possibly. My dad didn't have the, I'm glad you brought that up. When they had this, we made cheddar.
See, they had.
We made cheddar on the Opie factory there before we came to Warren because they wanted cheddar. And then we were closed because they had the cheese holiday. And then after we moved to Warren, we didn't have no quota for foreign type cheese. We didn't have the quota.
That's right, yeah.
You had to make it.
Right, you had to have
Otherwise,
quota.
you made cheddar, which is what they needed for the war effort.
Yeah,
And then, of course, my dad had to make cheddar, which he didn't like at all, and he wasn't a cheddar man. And we hired Mr. McKee, and the first thing we did is when we came home was took the mats back out and put the kettles in.
Well, I remember buying some cheddar boxes
And that's probably when you were at the cheddar.
at Chelsea. Yeah, we were at Chelsea then, and I don't remember how many, but I remember going up there to get it.
Okay, now Chelsea was located.
Do you want this in sequence to build up to Chelsea?
Yeah, let's
Or,
do that. Let's just
all right.
drop back to your father there.
Yeah, go back to Dad. See, after we left Wisconsin, Dad found work. He notified all his cheese customers that he was looking for work. 'Cause we sold cheese all over. And a party from Sycamore answered him saying that Mr. Dunmore needed a cheesemaker. So that's where Dad took work, for the Sycamore Ice Company. And he hauled milk and made cheese there for him. And we lived out in the country then. I went to charter girls' school. From there, I think we went to Monarch. And he worked for Zivney then, Art Zivney. And we were
And what
down,
kind of cheese did they make down there? Do you know? Do you recall?
at Dunmore's.
No, at Minnock,
And Monarch, that was cheddar.
cheddar.
And Art made butter too.
Now Minnock, give a little location here. That's
That's down 51 Central Illinois.
Central Illinois, down in that
A
area.
couple hours south there. And
And they're still there, by the way. Art's still there, and they're still.
well, I don't think Art's there, but his kids are, Shirley and another one.
Maybe Swiss, I think.
The last I knew, they were making baby Swiss, and the time Dad was there, he would go to work about one day a week. He'd go to work way, way early, and he'd make butter before the milk started coming in, and then he made cheese after that.
Is that right?
So he'd make butter too.
All right, moving right along. Then from there, your father.
Well, he was down there about a year, let's say a year, slightly over, and then we went to Joliet, and he was only there 6 months, but I can't tell you who he worked for. We lived at 1305 Cass Street at Joliet. And then we came to Lena. We took work with Colbs and Lena. George McPhillips moved us up from Joliet to Lena. And then Dad was there. Let's see. Oh, must have been, now that would have been 39, 40 along in there.
When did you move to Warren, or was Chelsea?
You're getting a little ahead of me here.
All right.
He was at Colbs, I think, a year and a half. And then from Colbs, he went to Independence, Iowa. He worked for Nielsen.
Was that a co-op out there?
No. Nielsen owned it. He went out there to start Wapsie Valley Creamery making cheese. And while we were out there, that's when World War II broke out. But he went out there to help help Nielsen get set up to make cheese. And Nielsen, I might be getting my names lost up here, but it was Nielsen at Independence. Nielsen managed to acquire the old condenser building that had went bankrupt. And that was a huge building. It had 2 big boilers, and it had a huge making room. And Nielsen put in a cooler. He even made ice cream. And he
Did you help at that time?
No, I was too young then. I did a little bit, yes. A little bit as a teenager, go in and help Dad. But at the outset of World War II, then things mushroomed. And I don't know how much milk they were taking in, but we just saw Dad for supper, and that was it. He would go back after supper and set the starters for the next day, and I remember him having an open regenerative pasteurizer, and how they had to preheat the milk to filter it, and this kind of stuff. If I remember right, they got up to around 70,000 pounds a day.
It was pretty hard to make cheese out there. The farmers, they weren't really, as I would say, as particular as they were here for Swiss cheese. Anyway.
Well, that part I can't answer, but Nielsen had what you would call almost a closed system. He condensed his own whey, so he didn't have a whey disposal problem. So he made the cheese, condensed the whey, he churned the butter, he made ice cream.
He's quite an entrepreneur there.
And during the war years, well, they sold to the government.
Sure.
And I distinctly remember helping load cheddar cheese in a boxcar that was for the federal government. Now, where it was going, I don't know. It seemed to me it was headed for England. But helped Nielsen's men load these 70-pound cheddars.
Well, moving right along, then where did we go?
And from Independence, we came to Chelsea.
Okay.
And that was 42 or 3.
See, this is when I became, acquainted with you people.
Yeah. Remember the name Alfred Hoy?
Oh, yes.
All right, he held up to us.
Curly.
Yeah, Curly.
Yeah.
Alfred. And at that time, his milk route was 22 miles long.
Oh, he had the milk crop.
He hauled 2 loads a day, and it was only 22 miles long. And he was back home, going around the block.
I just remember your dad down there making cheese, and he had a good trade. He always did have a trade where he sold out to customers right from the back.
Oh yes, we had a good following for that. We sold a lot of cash cheese.
What I want to bring up here is, if we can, and without putting you on the spot here for time-wise or whatever it is, but I always said that took it as a fact that your father was the first one that made this Colby Jack.
Oh, there's two-tone. They call it Kojak today.
Yeah.
And you name it. Yeah. He started playing on that when I was an early teenager, before I got a driver's license.
Now, what year would that be about?
Oh, that was right during the war years. You had 42-3. I got my driver's license.
Chelsea, right?
At Chelsea, yeah. And he would, if he'd be making a vat of colored cheddar and a vat of white cheddar, side by side, he'd mix some in the corner, and that's how he made it. Called it Till's two-tone. T-C, tone. And that's where we got started with it. And, well, it just went from there.
And it never really progressed until back when this Kojak series came along.
Oh, yeah.
And Peterson come along from up there in Wisconsin, and I got to get this on tape.
Go ahead.
I got to get this on tape, and of course, he registered the name, which was fine.
Kojak.
Kojak.
Yeah.
And of course, they had that Kojak series on the TV, and between the two of them, And of course, it was around the two-tone cheese, as you call it.
Right.
But sometimes it takes a while for things to catch a fire. You know, like
Yeah.
baby Swiss, string cheese, and a lot of those cheeses were around for a number of years before finally the public started to accept that.
All right.
But anyhow, then maybe you can add to this, but I'm going to enter this here with this. But anyhow, then this Peterson registered, and of course, anyone that was making this cheese, he turned around and had his attorney write him a letter.
We got one of those letters, but I want to get a little more into the story here. You go ahead.
Now you tell it. See, go right there. All right.
All right, well, let's, should I
Go right.
proceed with the family history a little bit?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
cheese-making history. All right, we were at Chelsea 11 years.
That's it.
And after
But
that.
this is where he started.
That's where he started playing with this two-tone.
Okay,
about
well,
42.
let's
42.
finish that up there.
All right, now I'll skip a little bit in here. And when we were at Excelsior, after we built the new building, we were making Monterey Jack, colored cheddar, white cheddar, you name it, and we were making this two-tone several different ways. And we got a nasty letter from the same party you're talking about, saying we couldn't make that cheese, and we couldn't call it two-tone, and he was gonna sue us and everything else. And we were turning around and sending him a letter saying, we've been making this cheese long before you had, we're not gonna quit making it, and you just go ahead and try and do what you think you can do. We never heard a word from him. It was all bluff. He wanted to market to himself, but he just couldn't have it to himself. There were several different ways you could make that two-tone. You could make it out of colored or white cheddar, or you could make it out of Colby and white cheddar, or you could make it out of Colby and Monterey Jack. There was all different kinds of ways to do this. The Colby and the Monterey Jack would break down the fastest. And the Monterey Jack and colored cheddar, that would work too, but you wanted the Monterey Jack a little dry then. But so what?
I used to, when they definitely mix the two together, but you know, eventually, and of course, all those things are always disputed or whatever it is, but I think it was a Lasser out here, and it might even came from a dealer, but Peterson, what they did, all they did was put a bevel in the middle of the vat, colored one side, and the other one was white. So all you had to do is after you got the curd, just stir it. It was the same vat, and of course everybody thought it was a Colby Jack. And when I came along with my Apple Jack, they said, "Well, you got to put all these ingredients. The difference between the what's Colby or what's those three different cultures we had in it." And I said, "There's no different cultures." And then I said, "It's the same as that Kojak. It's all the same cheese." Well, they didn't even know if it stayed in Wisconsin for years. It wasn't a Colby on one side, and all they did was put the bevel in between the two sides of the vat, color one side, and it didn't make any difference because it came. And today, it's a very popular item for looks, attractiveness. There's an awful lot of cheese made, and names from 40, 60 to call it what you may. Two-tone, I've heard it called many different names, and of course, actually, when they do say Colby and cheddar, it's supposedly supposed to be made in two different vats and then mixed.
That's the way we did it.
But I always felt that your father was the first one, and I record that history. Going along to your father.
Back to 42-3, long in there.
Yeah.
Now, what else do you want to know?
Well,
From Chelsea?
and Chelsea, you made two vats. You had two vats down
Oh, we got it up to 36,000 pounds a day. And it was just Dad and I alone working it. And that was over 400 cans a day. And then after World War II, the support price dropped 5 cents. It went off 1 week, and we had to drop the price of our milk 62 cents in 1 month. And we lost 50 farmers overnight. Dwayne Berkel was, by that time, was driving the route that the Hoy used to have. And he took his load to Gratiot. And Harbaugh had the east route.
Which was Carnation.
Yeah. And Harbaugh had the east route, and he took his load to Kent, that was Barden's, and we ended up with 22 farmers. And old Ray Breed come along the next morning, he says, "Shut her down, Bill." Dad says, "No," he says, "I'll bring her back." And that was the summer before I got married. And that summer, Dad bought a truck. Then we went to Janesville, we bought a van. And then a month before we was married, we went to Columbus, Wisconsin, and he had me pick up a weight tank to put in that truck. And it was right after we was married, I started driving that truck. And the first morning I drove, I had 5 cans of milk. I had Levi Anderson, Rush Township, and I had Joe Jackson over in North Township. I had 5 cans of milk. 4 years later, we had 2 trucks on the road and 400 cans of milk.
Is that right?
We had it back.
Well, if I may say this, I going through past, in my life, and I know what used to happen in our factory and several of the other ones, especially some of the Swiss. The cheese price would always go down first, and the condensers, they'd always hold an extra month or so, and craft. And then when they had the farmers, the price seemed to adjust anyhow, and they were already gone.
Yeah, the philosophy behind this financially was our competition took the profits from the war periods, and they stretched this out over 3 paydays. In 6 weeks, they were right down with us.
Sure, that's what I said.
Yeah, and then the
they'd
few
always
farmers,
hold, they'd hold, and after they had the farmers and
the other thought is, Dad never wanted to own the milk trucks. Well, that was fine until this happened. If he would have owned the milk trucks, we'd have probably lost 2 dozen farmers. That would have been it. But that isn't the way it was.
well, moving right along, then what? Then you left Chelsea?
And then he was having problems with himself. He was working so terrible hard. We got her back up to 36,000 pounds a day. And Dr. Grott, that just passed away this last week, told him he was working too hard. He had to get out of that. So Dad resigned basically because of his health. He was just plain working too hard. We were making 50 cheddars a day.
And you sold out to who?
We sold, when we first went to Chelsea, we were selling the cheese to Kraft at Freeport. And when they left Freeport, then we come up here to Triangle Monroe. And, we came to
This
Triangle.
was Yankee and
I don't remember who was behind it. And we
then
sold
she
that.
became Hoffman.
Yeah, but that was after we were out of there, after we left Chelsea. Then for a year or better, we sold cheese to United Cheese Company. I think it was a branch of Zurcher and Broadhead. They bought a lot of cheddar horns from us. And then after Dad left Chelsea, let's see, where did he go then? He worked for Colb's a little bit again, and then he went down.
Who did you sell your factory to, the tools?
At Chelsea?
Your dad left.
He didn't have any tools to sell. All he sold was the milk trucks.
Oh.
The tools belonged to the factory.
Belonged to
It
the
was all
farmers.
all farm owned.
And what cheesemaker came in there? Can you recall?
Niesman, Burl Niesman.
All right. Okay.
Now, the cheesemaker that was ahead of Dad was Russell Burns, and he was there just a few months short of 20 years.
I never knew him, but I did hear the name
So
mentioned.
Russell Burns was ahead of Dad. Okay,
All
Niesman
right.
came behind us. Go ahead.
Now, your father went back into cheesemaking.
Oh yes.
Well, let's go into that.
Less than a year later, he took the job down in Lorne. That wasn't near as much stress, and it was a nice building. And he took the job down there, and he was down there 7 years.
Working for the farmers?
Yeah, working for that co-op in Lorne. Fred Kemple was the secretary, and Jake Albright was the president, and I forget who the bookkeepers were. And
And were you helping at this
yep,
time?
it wasn't long he hired me down there, and then it wasn't long that one of the milk haulers wanted to sell out. Dad bought that route, put me on the route again, and I was hauling one route. Charlie, I can't say his name, he was driving the other company route. So here I was driving truck again, but that's the way it went along.
Well, how are the roads down there in the spring?
Oh, like any other place in the spring. You get a sinkhole and look out.
Illinois especially, it seems like.
I can tell you, I can spin some good yarns, whether you believe it or not, I'll never know.
Well, tell me about one of them spring ones.
Okay,
Did you bury one once?
You bet I buried one. Do you remember Frankie Shear?
Yes.
When we was at
Oh,
Chelsea?
absolutely.
Anybody knows Frankie Shear.
Yes.
Well, right by his
Sure.
timber there where he lived, there was always a sinkhole. Always. And I stopped one Easter Sunday morning and I walked this sinkhole. The track was too near the ditch. I figured I'd tip over. So I picked my spot now and went right down through the middle and I didn't make it. I fell through in one rear corner and the opposite front corner. And Frankie come out of cussing and swearing at me. He said, "Didn't you see that stick up there in the middle of the road?" I says, "Frankie, if you don't want me over here, you should have a fence post in there, not that little twig." And then Francis Spinner, where I was going to get the milk, Howard and Francis sold milk to us, they were brothers, and he come up with a little Ferguson 30. Didn't even have chains on it. He wrapped a chain around each wheel, and I put one to the truck, and he pulled me out with that Ferguson 30. And how he ever did it, I'll never know. He had to pick, well, I just had to lift that truck up and pull it out. And
that runs around lower, that is what.
So much for that.
Yeah, I've experienced it. I had to bring it up.
All right, and I'll spin another one. The spring of '54, when we left Chelsea. You know where Fiddler Road is?
Yes.
All right. I started north on Fiddler Road. I loaded Charlie Martin. I loaded another one. I was up there by Delbert. And that last blow, in the spring of '54, I figured I went 200 yards and I couldn't see the end of the hood.
That's a county road too.
Yeah. The next thing I know, the truck goes this way, and I was too close to the ditch, and the outside dual went through the shoulder of the road. And there I sat. And one of my brothers was with me, and I just
get over.
It's a wonder. And one of my brothers was with me, and I said, got out, and I looked, and I said, this is it. I just shut it off. I said, we're walking away from it. And whoever it was, he couldn't believe me. I said, that's it. I said, we're stuck. Can't get out. And when we walked out, the snow was only knee-deep. But when Happy Bastion plowed me out later in the afternoon, I plowed the road, the snow was over shoulder deep, as high as he pushed it up. Then I called Maynard McNett as soon as the Happy went down.
He's the fellow with the record.
Yeah, Maynard pulled me out. I said, Maynard's dead now. He come down to that Cabo Brandon Chevy. You remember that?
Sure.
And he looked it over, and the farmers had found out where I was. They were bringing milk to me. They were taking their empties off and loading milk on. And he laughed at him. He said, "You'll never pull him out." And Maynard just kept on working. He gave me two pieces of angle iron that were together, a chain between them, you know. No, he put it on his truck. That went under the wrecker. 2 little pieces of angle iron, or channel iron. And then he hooked it up under the frame, and he backed up on him. And he gave me a cable about the size of my thumb, and a short piece of chain, and he says, "Now you hook that chain on your truck the way you want it." I went around both sides of the frame and come out in a V. And when he got ready to pull, he says, "Now you guys that are standing here laughing at me," he says, "you stand on the front bumper of this wrecker." Remember that was a Cabo Brandon?
Yeah, because it would lift up.
You remember that was a Cabo Brandon?
Yeah.
All right. When he pulled, the front end of that truck come up, and those farmers was all standing in that front bumper, and it was higher than the cab. That cable was just like a banjo string, just straight right up to the winch. And after he told me to start my engine to help him. And when the truck started to come out, and the wrecker didn't even fall down, it come down just nice and easy.
He was a good man. I had him pull me out one time, and I won't win it today, but he arrested me. Almost
pulled
where
out.
a truck. But one time it tipped over a hole. I'll tell you some. Put it down some other time. But Maynard was good. He was good at it. He knew it, and he was calm and cool.
Yep. He told me he pulled out 7 trucks that day.
From
He
the
charged.
snow, from the
Charged.
snow and the road conditions underneath.
He only charged $10. And that was big money back in '54, $70 a day.
Well, we're moving right along here in this tape. We're going to take a look here.
Where are we at?
I think we're going to take a little break here. All right? Shall we just take a little pause?
Yeah. You're going to decide to go a little this way, one wheel in the ditch, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Loaded with cheese.
No.
Probably weighed over 20,000. Like you're saying, ready to go this way. Got out and I looked things over, and it was all ice.
I know why.
And I says
There's hardly a thing here. These
to
experiences.
Mr. Belk, I says, if you got somebody close by with a tractor, we just hook on the front end and slide the front end of the truck around, it'll come right out. So that's what we did. We hooked on the front of the truck, slid the wheels around on the ice, and we drove it out. Okay, go ahead.
I used to hit some young kid picking up milk or whatever. He called me from Shaftsville. You know the hills in Shaftsville?
Oh, you betcha.
So, and of course, there's a young kid, there was a substitute driver, you might know, on a Sunday, and that night we had a ice storm like that, and I told him, take the chainsaw. Well, they didn't, that kids are, Well, there he was. So I took the duals and went down Shaftsville, down by that church there. And of course, I didn't know the route because we bought it from Harry Nelson, from the operative factory. That's why we were down in there. And I didn't have the trucks in there, or we had the trucks, but we had drivers for Harry's route. Well, there was a hill that went straight down, and when you'd hit the brake, it still slided. You know what I mean? The dual was in between.
I know all about that stuff.
And the gas dam on the end was the T. I tell you what, I thought sure as the world, there's nothing else you could do. But going down that damn thing, the minute you start to brake a little bit, then you start swinging off, or pulling one way or the other. Oh God, like I said.
Well, I can tell you another one. We had a brand new truck, 54 Ford, down in Chelsea. We bought from Court.
You on the court?
Yeah, it wasn't even 2 weeks old. It blew a wheel cylinder.
Oh God.
And if that would have blew 50 yards later, it'd been -1 truck.
Another thing.
So I just heeled back on the emergency, and when the truck stopped, a cloud of smoke went by me, and the emergency was burned out.
I'll tell you another thing that came with this positive traction,
Yeah, the positive traction.
And then some of the guys you get out of the corner, and of course the guys always headed in, and then and you know what positive traction is that well, I almost went in once, but they told me about it because I knew I was leery of it. But when you would be driving and you hit that ice, it would drive you right in, right? You turn instead of the wheel going around, it drives you right straight ahead. And how them guys rolled two up on it because that was a bad thing. All right, I'm going to go through here, testing 1, 2, 3.
All right, go ahead. We're going to get back to our story. We got to remember where we stopped at.
All right, you remember. Yeah.
We were at Lauren, weren't we, when we stopped?
Now we're testing 1, 2, 3. All right, Wesley.
You got that?
Continue in some of this stories here. We were talking about Lauren, and from Lauren, where did you go?
From Lauren, Dad took work out at Independence, Iowa for a little while.
Okay, we went through that.
Another time. See, this is the second time.
Oh, all right.
For another people. He went out to Independence Dairy. And I went to Coles and Lena. I worked for Frida for 7 years. And then Dad
Renter.
Frida Renter. And then Dad worked for Harry Nelson for a while too. And then
That's over in Apple River.
and Apple River Power.
And Frida was Frida Renter at Lena.
Right. I worked
And
for
what
Frida
type
Renter.
of, what, they were making French cheese?
Well,
Yeah.
Coles?
Yeah.
Well, they hired me to make baby Swiss.
Oh,
But I was helping them in the soft cheese room, and I was making their baby Swiss, anywhere from 4 to 6 vats a day. I was their cheddar man, Colby man, whatever they wanted. But it was nothing to make 600 baby Swiss a day.
all right. And what year would you think would that be?
Oh, let's see, 68. Probably started in the early 60s. We got a new Chevy, a new truck when we took over Excelsior. Yeah, it would have been prior to 68.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to Frida about that because I think they were the original ones that brought really baby Swiss, that Delico brand here.
Delico brand, yeah. They brought, somehow they acquired that out through the University of Iowa.
Yeah, Ames.
Yeah.
And, all right, we'll go from there. All right, now let's go with your father then. And when did he go to Excelsior then?
Must have been about 68. Now, just like I was saying earlier, I looked at Oscar's operation 6 weeks before Dad bought it. I won't go into the details.
But you were on separate ways. You
Yeah.
were working for Colt Maine,
Yeah.
and he was working for Harry Nelson
And
in Apple River.
yeah, and I looked at it, and it scared me, and I backed off. 6 weeks later, Oscar sold it to Dad, and then Dad hired me to fix it. And we were at the old Excelsior site about 4 years, and we were
Tell me where Excelsior is located here.
now it's on 73, but originally Excelsior was just east of Leoc-on-the Lake on Shippey Road. Shippey Road takes off north of Lena and it makes a dog leg. as you
Country
come north.
factory.
Yeah, it's a country factory. It was a farmer co-op at one time. Yeah, we were there.
Now, when your dad bought it, was the kettle still there?
There was 2 kettles in there yet, but they had 2 big, 2 15,000-pound vats in there too. We were making mostly Munster.
Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar was making Munster, but they did have a couple kettles in there. And then we put the 3rd vat in there for making Munster. And I remember them having quality problems, and I'd been through the building and found some extra plates for the pasteurizers. And I told Dad, I said, I think if we lengthen the holding period, was a Kuzel pasteurizer. If we lengthened the holding time, you remember the
Sure.
2 and 4 pasteurizer?
Yeah.
All right. I don't remember how many I put in there. Let's say I put 2 or 4 in, something like that. I added those to the pasteurizer and just kept right on going just like that, and pasteurized at 160. You know, if you got too high, well, you damage the protein. And didn't think much of it. We hauled our cheese just like we always did, you know. We were selling part of it to Darman and part of it to Monroe Cheese Corp. And the field man, Monroe Cheese Corp, come down. I can still see this. He come in just like a bullet. He went right straight over to Dad. He says, "What'd you do? What'd you do? What'd you do?" Dad said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "What'd you do?" He said, "Cheese changed from one day to the other, just like that." Why, he said, "Wes did it." I said, "You have to go talk to him." Why, he said, "Just like that, there was a difference from one day to the next."
Is that right?
And he come over and talked to me and wanted to know what I did. Well, I explained to him. I said, "I added these holding tubes in this Kuzel pasteurizer to give us a longer holding time for a better kill. That's all we did." And then made sure the pasture was running right at 160, 161 or 2, something like that. You know, if you got on too high, well, you damage the protein. So that's all we did.
So you had a better quality cheese then?
Better quality cheese. I don't know if I should put this on the record.
Go
or not.
ahead, let's do it.
The first year, I'm not putting anybody down now, but the first year Dad operated Excelsior, he lost 10 grand.
I'm buying the milk.
The second year, he made 10 grand. So that means he had to make 20 grand. Now, I don't remember where this pasteurizer deal fit in.
Like you said, you had quality milk problems there with the farmers, and you really weren't possibly fully pasteurizing. the
Well,
milk.
true, we both agree on what was possibly happening.
Yeah.
But I don't know where this pasteurizer deal come in, whether that was, somewhere in that first year or the first part of the second year. But what's the difference? I don't know where it fit in, but it helped.
Well, while we're just speaking that, we might just add this, pasteurization, you can cook milk up to 120 degrees and hold it for an hour, and you can have fully pasteurization, supposedly. And you can cook milk up to 140 or 50 degrees and maybe only hold it for 30 minutes. But someplace in there, you can substitute the temperature for holding period. And most people, time is so essential, we have what they call the flash type pasteurization. You know, what supposedly is supposed to be, it used to be that 162 degrees for 15 seconds. But now the state with, our state anyhow, with the timing pump and that, they want 162 with 20 seconds. And that's their standard, which supposedly is fully pasteurization. And you said, as you said, by going too high, you kill.
Yeah, and by my lengthening the pasteurizing,
the holding time.
The holding time, I was doing just like you're illustrating.
Yes.
And I can bring down the temperature.
And bring down the temperature, which still had a good body of cheese, and still
and
the pasteurized, which you fully pasteurized. And sometimes these things happen in these pasteurization. And while we're there, maybe you can explain what happens in these plates here for our interview here. You know, the milk goes on one side.
Oh yeah, you got
regenerative.
the regenerative section where you've got your cold milk coming in on one side and your hot milk coming out on the other side. So you're preheating the cold milk that's coming in to the heat section, and when it comes out of the heat section, then it's in turn preheating. The cold milk is cooling down the hot milk and preheating the cold milk coming in, thus needing very little steam water to cool it, to get it down to 86 or 87 degrees or 88, whatever
Or
you're using.
not too much steam to get it back up to 162 degrees.
Well, yeah, or I'm thinking now when it gets to that.
It's the vat. So they call it the regenerative system, and some of they had a leak in there, or something would happen, and it would contaminate. There's a lot of little things that can enter into this pasteurization.
And then too, we did add. We mentioned earlier, but probably isn't on tape yet. We put in a vacutherm, and say that was something too.
Can you explain a little how the vacutherm works?
Okay, vacutherm puts the milk in an unbalanced atmosphere. You familiar with it?
Yes.
Okay. Vacutherm puts the milk in an unbalanced atmosphere just long enough to damage the bacteria cell wall. And it's only in there for a few seconds, and then it's pumped out and goes to the regenerator section. And that's the whole essence of the vacutherm. To damage the bacteria cell wall so the bacteria that you put in the vats for cheese making can supersede the unwanted bacteria that you would get into the vat by poor pasteurization or such.
And then this bacteria was pulled up in this vacuum.
It just damaged the cell wall. It didn't destroy the bacteria, but it damaged the cell wall so it could not grow.
And what part did the water play?
Water just lubricated the pump. That's all it did. Just lubricated the pump so you could draw your whatever it was, 18 or 22 inches of vacuum on it. But the milk came in and went around this tank, and you could just see it get pumped out just that fast.
When we went over to Apple, we never had one for Swiss cheese, but when we went over to Apple River, you just couldn't believe the day that we didn't use it, of the odor and the smell.
Yeah. We bought a lot of milk that was off quality, and oh man, and somebody walked in outside of just about floor and pulled that off flavor right off of it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's and it had good cheese.
Right. Yeah. You can buy a sow's ear and come out smelling like a rose.
But I don't. They just don't use them anymore. I don't know if they're outlawed or not now. I don't just know. But
you have better quality control. You know where this come from? I remember we were at Chelsea. We got the cheese reporter all the time, and Kraft built a huge plant in the Deep South. They built a plant in the Deep South, and down there they all eat wild weeds and such, the cattle eating. But they put the vacutherm in to pull the wild onion flavor off the milk, and the offshoot of it was better quality control. This is how it evolved.
See, Harry Nelson had it over there at Apple River there, and I still got some parts to it over there. Got a new water pump. Well, it was quite a thing, and they're using them an awful lot in Mexico.
Well, I
because
understand.
usually there or where you have.
But that was the essence of that vacutherm. And then we were in the old building at Chelsea, at Excelsior for 4 years. Then we built a new building, and that's where Torkelson is now.
Okay, that's located between.
That's north of Lena on Route 73, and what we used to call Dunn's Bottom. It's a mile and a half north of town.
Okay, you were making cheese down there, and I put in some holding tanks.
Yeah, I remember that. Go ahead, tell your story. Well, you bought a starter can from us too. Remember that?
Yeah.
Big starter can. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're making this Italian cheese, and we've got this new holding tank, and of course now we're starting to take Sundays off, and maybe even Saturdays. You know, guys, because everybody wants to play ball, and we had the capacity now, and of course making Italian cheese, which you get a high acid starter, and then you almost repasteurize the cheese on mozzarella to where you mix it with 180-degree water again. So if you have a little gas, it's almost like a processed cheese. All right, so the boys thought, well, now here comes, it was either Memorial Day or Labor Day. I think it was Labor Day. I don't just recall. I'm sure it was Labor Day because we had more of a flow of milk there. They decided, they said, John, we're not going to make cheese there. We got enough room and we can make it up on Tuesday and Wednesday. I said, well, you guys think you can put it together? Fine. And I don't know where I was at, but I was gone. But I came back in that factory, I think it was on Wednesday, and they never got the holding tank empty. And of course, it was like starter every time you put more in. You just couldn't.
You just inoculated what was you inoculated the fresh with the old.
Yes, and of course you couldn't. They call it acid development now. Even if you mix warm milk with cold milk, something else new is coming on. But anyhow, I realized that look, they're never going to get that tank empty. I said, boys, we're going to keep right on making cheese. I don't care what. And of course, we went right around the clock. But the milk was getting so bad, so acid and rancid that I realized that no way could we get decent cheese out of there, and we couldn't sell it anyhow. So I thought, well, just take the cream, sell the cream, and make some skim milk cheddar. At least we can sell it for barrel cheddar.
Yeah, barrel cheddar.
No, I hadn't made cheddar for years, didn't have no culture. I thought, who the heck can I call? So I called up Wes. And Wes says, well, by golly, John, I'll come and help you out. I said, if you got any starter, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't remember how many I had, but I brought them up to you.
Yeah.
And
well, I hope we did that after you showed us how to make the cheddar.
I got you started and knew everything was going to be all right. And the boys listened to what I was telling them, and then I didn't even stay for the finish. They had to take care of it to
Well,
finish it.
I'll tell you what we did later on. We went and got some whey out of the whey tank and just made it out of there and used your. Describe your little rennet cup there again, will you?
Well, I mean that for making raw milk cheddar?
Yeah.
You remember? You
Yes.
remember. All right.
Yeah. I always had one and I wanted to keep it, and they always put it in the
I don't know where
in
our-
the salt barrel, and then finally it was all chipped away.
Well, it was a little porcelain cup like with a certain sized orifice in the bottom, and you'd fill that with milk out of the vat, and you'd have so much rennet in a little glass bottle with a little water in it, and you'd set this over the edge of the vat
Right.
in the corner, and you'd fill it, you'd reach in and fill it, and then when it got to the top line, you poured this in quick and stirred it, and then you watched it. You didn't have to stand right there, but when it quit running, that told you the acidity of the milk in that vat. And that gave the cheesemaker a tip as to how he was going to have to work that vat. If the cup would almost empty, he had sweet milk. But if the cup would not empty and it'd be up near the top, you had a load of dynamite.
Yeah, it really get going, see. And really, it was really a guideline.
Right.
You know, of course, a lot of people could do it with the acidity tester that came along, but this was really accurate.
This was do you suppose this little rennet test was ahead of the acid emmer?
I don't know, but to me, I thought it was more accurate, especially when you had milk. You know, when milk was back in the wintertime, when one day you'd have 20 degrees below zero weather, and then it would warm up to 50 degrees, and one time it was ripe, and one time it wasn't, and then it was so slow. Whereas it had the opposite, that when you had the sweet milk and you wanted to get it to, say, you used down to number 2, you know, that it would only go down to half.
Nice sweet milk.
This is what you could almost set your time clock with. And this is where you want it, because you didn't want to make cheese that took all day long to develop the acid. And if you had this dynamite, you just know if you could keep up with it, but you had to make it anyhow. But I want to thank you, at this time, coming up there. And by the way, we ended up with good quality skim milk cheddar.
You were able to market it?
We marketed it. We were selling regular cheese to this one party, and the market was good for filler or process.
For your barrel cheddar, skim milk barrel.
Yeah, and we sold the cream, and we didn't take any more 3-day holidays.
Well,
that was our lesson.
Well, as soon as we got over to the new plant at Excelsior, we learned quick that 3-day milk does not work. So, Sunday was our big day for loading milk, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's the way the drivers had to go. Sunday was a big day, Tuesday was a big day, Thursday and Friday was a big day. So there's, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Well, we didn't have the capacity to clean the tank up. See, had we had a number of vats, which a lot of factories are today, now they got the capacity of when that Monday does hit or that Tuesday bangs. A lot of them only work 4 days a week. They got the capacity to put it through, but we were limited in our brine.
Well,
that's why we had to switch from mozzarella to the skim milk cheddar. Going ahead, back to
Excelsior?
Yeah.
Well, when we got over to the new plant, we had 4 vats in there, and we were basically making Munster. And we no more than got over there, and Donovan, that's Darman Cheese Company, he wanted some Monterey Jack. And, well, it didn't bother us, we just went ahead and made it. And that's the way it went. At the new plant at Excelsior, we made Monterey Jack, we made Munster, we made cheddar, and we made our two-tone. We had 4 different kinds of cheese we made. But I enjoyed the 6-vat day the most. We could start number 1 Munster, number 2 Munster, number 3 anything we wanted, number 4 anything we wanted. Then we come right back, number 1 would be empty, we come back into number 6, and that would be empty.
Did you build those ponds down there? Did you?
Yes, all right. You mentioned the lagoon system. I'll define them. The first lagoon is 14 feet deep. Second lagoon is 12 feet deep. The last
This is for affluent.
Yeah, this is for sewage. This is for sewage. And the last cell was 6 feet deep. It had a 252-day detention time at the rate of 5,000 gallons a day. And the sun did all the work.
It's remarkable. But then you built the second lagoon also. Then
No, we had 3 right to start.
we had right off the start.
Right off the start with. And we had aerators in there, and all the aerators do is put oxygen in the water to help this process. But the 15th of December, I would always shut the aerators off. Because when those lagoons got cold, they don't do anything. It's a waste of power. The only time we would get any smell would be in the spring and when we started them up again. And I would come with quite a few overdoses of bugs, bacteria. So we bought bacteria, we put in every so often to help this. The original lagoons that were built up in the Dakotas in the 50s, the last I knew, were still being used. They'd never been cleaned. When sewage hits the cell wall in a new cell, the sewage seals the ground. It does not leak. They do not have to be clay lined. That came from our engineer. Alan Farr was our engineer.
We had the same one, on ours. We only had the one in the area, and then we go back into the city.
Yeah, well,
But Mountain Wall, the creek there, but I always admired that setup, the engineer that.
1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
and the effluent coming off of number 3 was almost like it had to be. So close the state couldn't do a thing to us.
But you say the first one has its bacteria, and then it flows into the second one.
1, 2, 3, it had a 252-day detention time, and that was the essence of the whole thing.
Which was quite a problem. All right, anything else on the Chelsea there? You were making your two-tone, which you were legal, right?
Yeah, when we were at Excelsior, when we got that nasty letter I was telling you about, we told him where to go.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I can tell you. I'll think of something later.
But,
What I was going to tell you at Excelsior, we no more than took Excelsior over. You know, we had operated the Lauren plant for 7 years. We no more than took it over, and a few farmers come up and wanted to sell milk to us. Up at Excelsior from Lauren. And Dad says, give me a little time, I'll get a truck. And we'll be down to see you. So we went down and started beating the bush. Nothing flat. I had all the milk I could haul in one truck. I was coming in with a 66 can bed, double decked right straight through, and we were setting off some. Clarence Sarn, he was bringing some in on his pickup truck. So we jumped from 30-some to 50,000 pounds overnight.
did you buy all the milk, or at that time, or just was it kind of a partial co-op, or?
No, Dad owned the business. It was
Lock, stock, and barrel.
that was it.
Yeah, I would like to have a conversation with your father. I always thought him big hands and hard work, and he worked hard, and of course you did too. Look at your hands there.
Can you imagine? I remember the time I saw him pick up 6 oranges.
I know he had, of course, those from working hard in those
Oh,
days,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And the other thing is, when cheese dates came along there, you were at Excelsior there on the gravel road, not the
Right.
road between Lena and Winslow. And either Oscar had some or else he did, I don't know. But I asked him if he had any old equipment, and he gave me some leather shoes and some soles.
Oh, I see that part. I don't remember.
And you see,
That
those little things, when I go up here in the square, and I see this little part here, and the cookie gave me a buck, it moves my heart, you know. And
Well, that's what my heart was too all through the years. I worked hard in the dairy industry. I got paid good, and I played hard. And what else do you say? I enjoyed my life.
give me an idea of play hard. We need a little socialization in here.
Well, I got a motorhome, and now I got a motorhome. We had one the last years of that. We'd take off and spend a weekend here or a weekend there. But my drivers always knew where I was. We just take a weekend. About every 6 weeks we could take a weekend and do something. That's what I mean, play hard.
Well, it's been a most interesting conversation, and thanks, Wesley.
Thanks, Johnny. Good to see you again.
You bet. You bet.